I just can't spend the rest of my life behind a desk. Like, I need to be out there helping people, and the joke's on me. We're not trying to convince people to join. We are just very honest about who we are and what we're trying to achieve, and people self-select. I think that that's a very core tenet of this business. Everyone here gets their own coffee.
Do you have a favorite character from the Marvel Universe?
Yeah, I was always...
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Dental Economist Show. I'm your host, Mike Huffaker, and today is a very special episode. Joining me today is Dr. Chris Villanueva, the founder and CEO of MB2 Dental. And we're actually here on site. MB2 Dental is a phenomenal story in the dental space and just passed 800 partner dental practices. So Dr. V, which I know is kind of how most people refer to you. So is that all right if I call you Dr.?
Yeah, or V, whatever.
Or V. All right, perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it.
No, thanks for having me. Excited.
Awesome. Well, look, I was doing some research before this conversation, and you have a really fascinating childhood. And I think so much of like who we become later on in life is tied to who we were when we were younger. You know, you were born, raised Cincinnati, Ohio. I know you're a big Skyline chili fan, which I have had by the way.
You like it?
I actually did. Yeah. In fact, as an aside, we did an event at the Kentucky Derby this last year, and two of my reps came with me. We flew into Cincinnati, and before we left and drove to Louisville, I said we have to stop and get Skyline, and we did.
Yeah.
And so it was good. It's enjoyable for sure.
It's an acquired taste. Like, well, once or twice a year, it's good.
Yeah, the on spaghetti, I think, is what really throws people off. You know, if it was just maybe a bowl of chili or the Coney dogs, but the spaghetti version is where it's a little bit.
Yeah, you don't ask questions as a kid; you just eat it. So it was good.
You just eat it, and enjoy it. Yes. So then it becomes a core memory. And you know, I know you spent time in Asia, and then ultimately you graduated high school in Venezuela before coming to college in the States. And so, you know, when you reflect back on kind of that time and the things that you took away that have influenced who you are today, what are some of the elements of your childhood and growing up that you think were really foundational for you?
Yeah, I mean, obviously not the traditional upbringing, you know, very old school Asian parents, very, very strict. I always joke about how, you know, most children in the U.S. have a bedtime, and, you know, you have to be in bed by 8 or 9 o'clock.
Sure.
I had a bedtime, but I was not allowed to sleep until 8 or 9 o'clock because I had to be studying because I wasn't allowed to be goofing off. So very traditional, old school Asian upbringing. They felt that there was a massive opportunity for this generation. And so I embraced it through and through. You know, growing up in Venezuela, it was very unique. You know, when I was there, it was a very, you know, it was a corrupt, but it was a democracy, and eventually devolved into what it is today. And I actually watched it kind of devolve. You know, I was there during the first coup in high school, and so I got a front row seat of how quick society can change. You know, and so I think that kind of molded some of my thoughts and kind of embracing today and trying to, you know, prepare for the unknown, never getting too comfortable, making sure that you're giving it all. And so I feel like that's probably the biggest takeaway for me in growing up outside the U.S. is understanding that, you know, things can change really quickly. And, you know, you spend a lot of time anticipating challenges in your business or your personal life and obviously in society. And so I was probably a little bit more prepared for COVID than most. I saw some of the unrest, but other than that, I think for the business, it serves me well in trying to identify challenges or headwinds in the space.
Now, did you know from a young age that you wanted to pursue a career in medicine?
You know, I loved healthcare at a young age. I mean, I always kind of knew it. No one in my family was really in healthcare. My father was a lawyer. I kind of want to break the mold a little bit, and you know, I just had a passion for helping people, and you know, dentistry came actually a little bit later. I mean, I thought I was going to be pre-med like most Asian children, and I always joked that I did the next best thing, and that's not, you know, being a dentist. I actually married a physician, and so she became the family physician. But yeah, I always had a knack for healthcare and the sciences, and you know, I actually met my wife on a mission trip down in Jamaica when she was on the medical side, and I was on the dental side, and so the rest is history.
Now, did you have any desire to follow your father's footsteps and go into law?
Yeah, it's funny. My father would ask me that, and I'd say, Dad, I just can't spend the rest of my life behind a desk. Like, I need to be out there helping people, and the joke's on me. I spend a lot of time behind a desk. So
Things go
I
full
think,
circle.
yeah, it came full circle, and now as a full-time CEO, it's a little less often I get to see patients.
Now, you opened your own practice when you were 27. Your first practice, is that right?
Yeah, I graduated at 26, so I guess technically around that time frame was I started my first practice. I bought out a handful of practices that I wasn't helping manage, and so yeah, it's been just me and a bunch of knucklehead friends just trying to figure out what we were doing. Doing everything top down. I mean, I remember climbing the rafters, running our own network cable, trying to get the phone systems to work.
Yeah.
It was you roll up your sleeves and do whatever it takes.
Did you see signs in yourself of you being entrepreneurial prior to opening up your dental practice? Did you have any experiences through college or kind of early years where you started businesses or did anything along those lines?
Yeah, little things here and there. I remember in dental school, I realized that our Henry Schein store was selling supplies at a discount to students, and I quickly realized that was at the advent of eBay starting up, and so I made a little bit of extra money, like selling some supplies on eBay from acting as a middleman from my Henry Schein rep at shout out Nova Southeastern, and so yeah, a little here and there, but never to the extent that I'm set to do nowadays. I mean, I always had a knack for just trying to find solutions and
Yeah.
finding opportunity and obviously connecting with people and sharing kind of the way I think. I mean, that's something I get from my father is, being able to relate to others and trying to persuade them in kind of the way I see the world.
I really love your approach of, hey, we'll figure it out. And I've heard you say that quite a few times and listened to a couple of the other podcasts that you've been on where it's almost like this steadiness and leadership where even if something happens or there's disruptive events, you kind of are taking this approach of like, it's going to be all right. Like, well, you have this confidence that you'll figure out how to move forward in the future. And even, when you start your first practice, then you say, I want to do this business with friends. You're pursuing a path of this is not done for, I want to make this or I want to do that. It's like satisfaction in life. And it feels a little bit like that's kind of the approach that MB2 has taken just overall with the partner dentists that you have. Can you share a little bit about like your approach to partnering with dentists and who the right practice owners are to
Sure.
partner with MB2?
No, absolutely. I think a lot of businesses today start with an investment thesis and,
Yep.
are very organized in their approach. And I respect that. To be honest, that never really happened for me. I'm a dentist. I view myself as a dentist through and through. And, a mark of success for me is being surrounded by, my friends and my peers that, we're aligned on what we're trying to achieve. And I think, the financial success is a byproduct of doing the right thing, treating people right, and just having an open mind about things. And so, I aspire to be the guy that has all the answers, but let's be very clear. Like, I don't have a background in business. I surround myself with great minds and they have the education to help us excel, but, being the anchor of the organization and trying to just be completely honest. I mean, every day that passes by, we've never been a company of that size before. And so we have to be humble in our approach. I've met a lot of individuals in my time as a CEO in other companies who I would think would have all the answers and quickly realize a lot of them just don't, and
Right.
I just take another approach where if I'm just honest with everyone, then they can't blame me for not being honest, like
Yeah.
it's a very simple philosophy, whether it's with my doctors, my investors, or otherwise, I mean, that's part of the reason why we have such a high success rate with all the doctors. I mean, we're not trying to convince people to join. We are just very honest about who we are and what we're trying to achieve. And people self-select, right?
Yeah.
And so we have a track record now of keeping our doctors happy and them understanding that this is a collective effort and this is not simply incumbent upon, the leadership or myself to execute and deliver. Like, it's a truly collective effort. And I think that's really the secret to how we've gotten as far as we have is, there's not a lot of division in the company. We all understand this is our company. We all understand that these are our challenges, and we all understand that, all we can do is be humble enough to admit we don't know and try to figure out the best way forward. And I think, that's why our results are different than everyone else's. We kind of just figure out our own, the way we view M&A, the way we view operations, the way we view the equity structure is drastically different than others. It is rewarding to see the same individuals who questioned it, a JV models just, 7-8 years ago. Now everyone's coming out with a JV model.
Right.
And so I feel like that's very reaffirming that people acknowledge the importance of having alignment with the providers. But, if I listened to everyone, I would have been, a top-down organization, opening up Dock in the Box offices next to Starbucks. And I just don't think that's the right approach for our profession.
Sure. Another approach of yours that I think is a little maybe counterintuitive, or it's not something that's really commonly spoken about. There's this adage, who got you here won't get you there. And a lot of businesses, they evaluate their organizations and they'll say, okay, well, this person's been great for us. We've had them as part of this organization for X amount of years. And now it's time for, somebody else to come in to take that mantle and run. And you've been pretty vocal about, you have had to bring in, some executive leadership folks as the company scales, but you have people in your organization that have been with you for years and years. And so how do you view the ability of people to continue to grow in an organization at scale? And why do you think you've been able to be successful with that?
Yeah, once again, it's a relatively new concept to me, changing leadership to different phases of a business, which I respect and understand. Most private equity sponsors, it's natural to have change in leadership. I attribute my philosophy to what I did in private practice. In private practice, it doesn't always happen, but it's a noble pursuit to have the same office manager your entire career, right? Sure. And they can be with you when your revenue is, sub $1 million. They could be with you when you're a multi-million-dollar practice, and there's no barrier in their capabilities to fulfill their role in a larger organization. And so maybe it was sheer ignorance where I felt like, we have to learn. We have to learn it together. I mean, I have to believe it because look at me. If I'm a dentist and now I'm doing what I do now, I mean, I had to learn it. And so I've invested heavily in my team. They understand that I advocate for them constantly, and they will do everything they can to rise to the occasion. And that's what I found over the years is they always have. And, you have to question about these so-called individuals who are now better positioned to take your company from a certain size. I mean, where were they before they were doing that? I mean, Someone took a leap of faith on those guys, right? Someone gave them the opportunity. So why not it be the team that got me here?
Absolutely. What are some of the traits that you see within your leadership team that you think are consistent across the different members of MB2?
Well, I think what's really unique about the leadership team as a whole is there's just not a lot of politics. There's not a lot of bureaucracy. I think in a lot of corporate environments, people are always jockeying for attention or position. We have a very flat organization. Everyone knows that, no one's out there to get them or trying to catch them making a mistake. We're all just here trying to do the best we can collectively. I'm very proud of my executive strategic meetings I have once a week with all my executives, and we sit down, we talk about, everything that touches the business. No different than in private practice when, you'd have a morning huddle, you just kind of run through kind of current state. I think that's helped us tremendously. And, and I'm kind of an in-person advocate. So, everyone's in person, everyone's here, and we're having those discussions candidly. I think that's helped us a lot. And, I talk about this often, how, leadership is very similar to parenting, right? Yep. I mean, Simon Sinek said it best when, your role as a parent is to kind of provide an environment where your children feel safe and they're not worried about the next meal or, a roof over their head, and they tend to flourish if they can focus their energy on productive pursuits. And it's no different than in leadership. I mean, I protect my team. I make sure there's no bureaucracy. They're not, feeling unsafe about, their employment. And so they can give it their all. And so, I know that's still alive and well. I have team members who have no background in AI, for example, and they're tackling it head on, and we're seeing results.
Yeah.
And I think it's far ahead of other portfolio companies. And so I know that we have the capability of adapting with that type of environment.
Yeah. So when you give people the opportunity to grow and to try different things, you see them rising to the occasion as a
Absolutely.
result. I heard you share that you were interviewing for a CFO role, and the gentleman that you were interviewing, you ended up saying like, "Well, I don't think for this role, like we'll have you come in for operations." And I'm sorry that I forget his name, but
Yeah.
that's kind of taking an approach of like, hey, yeah, I can evaluate talent and where people have their abilities and find the right places for people. Would you say that that's kind of like one of your superpowers?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's a superpower, or just my loyalty. Like I feel like everyone has a lot to give the organization, and putting them in the right seat of the bus is your contribution as a leader. Whether that falls within the traditional narratives or titles is not really important to me.
Yep.
And so I kind of have my players. I know what they're really good at, and I task them with and even up until recently, I'm still shuffling that deck, making sure everyone's in the right seat of the bus, because it doesn't really benefit anyone if I try to force them to do things they're not really excellent at. And so, and that's never a static exercise. Like, everyone constantly is moving in this organization, getting opportunities. When the organization has needs, I can look at our current roster and say, hey, he or she will do great in that role. And they've always, like I said, they've always rise to the occasion. Right. And so, I think when you give that level of transparency and trust to individuals, I mean, they're going to do whatever it takes to not let you down. Right. Just like I've been given the trust of my partners, and I'm going to work my tail off to not let them down.
And when I walked in here today, everyone is so kind and so welcoming. And I got the tour, and it's an amazing facility that you all have. Love the pickleball courts, love the basketball, the gym. I got a mug from a claw machine, which I've never won one of those in my entire life ever. But it's clear that there's a high value placed on culture. And from my perspective, culture typically starts from the top down, and it's modeled, and there's an example within leadership for others. I find it intriguing in the dental space, where you have an organization that serves so many practices, what that separation of culture looks like, especially when you're really an organization that's enabling dentists to be their best. How much of the kind of this culture that I see inside the walls of MB2 here in Texas end up being absorbed to some extent in those 800 plus practices that you have as part of your organization?
Well, as you know, we're very selective of our partners, as they are selective of their partners. And so we tend to select owners who view their role in leadership and in the space very similar to how I view it. Like, what you're seeing is how I used to treat my 7 employees at my first practice. I would, be a good employer, but provide them a safe environment where we can celebrate together, grow together, have fun. I mean, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do your family sometimes. So you really, and in a world where, you can get employment pretty much anywhere. I mean, Amazon's down the street. Maybe will get another quarter or two, we're going down there. So it really comes down to quality of life and who you want to spend your days with. And so I've embraced that. When I have my private practice, I embrace it now. And what I see is the owners that do join us have the same value set as me. They take care of their staff. They reward them. They celebrate with them. It's a journey they do collectively. And so it's not that they need to absorb what I do. They just do it in their own version. Right. But I think our values are very similar.
So over the past 4 or 5 years, as interest rates rose, we've seen a lot of contraction in M&A taking place in the dental space. It seemed like, when money was free, it was like hotcakes all over the place. Everyone's buying everything. Probably not a lot of diligence, and a lot of organizations that were just kind of like smashed together without maybe a lot of thought other than, hey, 2 years from now, we're just going to be able to turn this with a better multiple because the EBITDA amount is larger with this conglomeration of practices. You've never really taken that approach, yet throughout the past 3-4 years, you've been one of the organizations that's been able to continue to maintain at a relatively rapid pace growth for your organization. And I've heard you say, you look at 3,000 practices every year, and there's roughly 3% that end up becoming affiliated with MB2. But what do you attribute the ability to continue to grow at the clip that you all have while other people have kind of fallen off and had really challenging times in their expansion?
Well, I think said another way, the reason why other groups are not growing is because they're having to learn how to operate a dental office. I mean, to your point, I think a lot of them just wanted to cobble a bunch of practice together and play the arbitrage and not really learning how a dental office operates or how to assist providers. I want to remind everyone, like, for the first 10 years of doing this, all we did was operate dental practices. There was no true M&A the way it is today. I actually, as a CEO, was appointed position. I didn't even get compensated for it. It was simply an appointed position for me to assist in reducing kind of our cash outlay to make our offices more efficient, our individual practices. So we had to learn how to operate this, or else there would be no reason for people to join us. And so during COVID, we really thrived because we knew how to operate during difficult times.
Right.
Today, there are market headwinds, i.e. particularly the interest rate increase, partly the inflation of step-in multiples, but we've just been very disciplined about it. We're just like, we're not trying to grow for the sake of growing. We want to continue to operate great practices. And if since the beginning, our kind of North Star was always, we wanted to be the best place to practice. With or without these recaps, with or without institutional capital, with or without, all these flashy things that sponsors are bringing in, like, we just want to be a better place to practice where, there's no compromise in your delivery of dentistry, that your practice is an outward representation of your values and your skill set. You're taking less risk. You have more time for your family and to pursue, your personal passions, and you make more. And so if you anchor your culture and your operations in that goal, M&A pursues. And so the individuals that, sign up to be our partners and who we like, understand that this is simply a merger of businesses where they have their life's work, I have my life's work. We decided to merge them so that we collectively can provide value to one another. I don't think that ever goes out of vogue, and that has no bearing on what, the interest rates are. Sure, that's a factor, but that's not driving my growth. That's not driving the organization. What's driving us is a purpose and a vision to be the right place to practice our art and science, right?
Now, I know you're very diligent at choosing partners, and that diligence really shows in the success that you have all had. It's impossible to bat 1,000. How do you handle hard conversations with practices, or are there hard conversations with practices where they're struggling, they're not meeting kind of expectations for their performance, for patient care? Like, how do you look at that and manage that within the ecosystem that you have here at MB2?
Yeah, I mean, it's no different than, there's a lot of practices that have multiple partners in them, right? And if patients aren't being seen because one of the partners is constantly on vacation, then I'm sure the partners are going to sit down and have a conversation about whether or not this is the right way to provide care for their community. And so it's no different. It's not accusatory. It's not condemning. It's simply like, hey, this is what our community, the communities need. And are you in for it? If you're not, then let's find a solution that makes it right. I mean, being able to have a difficult conversation and not be disagreeable is a key tenet of running a organization of our size. I mean, but it's just a very transparent approach to management, right? And so, life happens. Like, people have life situations that change things, and we're very tolerant of. I mean, we're just partners in everything we do, right? And that's how I view my partners. Like, yeah, sure, we can have expectations and we can align as much as you want, but when life happens, you just got to figure it out.
How do you balance being in the moment and kind of enjoying the journey versus looking forward to where you want to go. I've heard you say, there's the potential where this organization can be much larger, and so there's clearly like forward thinking vision. But I've also heard you say, hey, look, like we're just figuring it out as we go, and I just really love what we're doing today. So how do you kind of balance those two things as the leader of the organization?
Well, I have the luxury of being able to dream because I have team members that really support the organization and myself. I understand the question. I mean, a lot of entrepreneurs and leaders really are hard nosed about where they want to be, and that's kind of their goal. Like I said, my goal is just to do an honest day's work where people are happy to come to work and they feel good about what they're doing for their communities and for our profession. And that doesn't preclude me from thinking about the true potential impact of the organization down the line now that I understand the opportunities available to us.
Yeah.
Right. And so I would never, 5 years ago, I wouldn't know where we're at. I thought, we had it made, and, we were a bunch of doctors and we're happy and we're all doing extremely well financially, and we all go on vacation, and we thought that this was it. This was nirvana of where any practitioner would want to be. And so it kind of opened a new world up when we had institutional capital and think about, what could this mean for the profession? And that's where, our future lay is whether it's a private or public setting, if we know that this is a zero compromise structure for private practitioners that want to own, that want to be tenants of their communities, what's really stopping them from joining our network? And if it's simply valuation, well, the future has a solution for that. And so if that's solved for, there's really no reason for people not to be part of our organization. So that's what really gets me excited. I don't take it for granted. I think it's still a lot of hard work to execute, but the idea that a bunch of knucklehead dentists could have figured out the right way to provide kind of localized healthcare in our country is a pretty cool concept, right? And that's what excites me.
And you have recently launched Carabelli Club, which in some ways creates the opportunity to make that network even larger.
Yeah.
Can you share a little bit about kind of what the vision is behind Carabelli Club, how it came to be, and what it means?
Yeah, absolutely. We've now amassed thousands of private practices that had said, hey, take a look at us as a potential partner. And for whatever reason, it wasn't the right time. Maybe not right for them, maybe not right for us. Maybe they're just a great small private practice, which is great. And so I started thinking about, well, how can I help them? If my ultimate goal is to help the profession and dentist, how can I help the private practitioner who has a great lifestyle practice? And so that's an easy stepping stone to be able to provide some of the services that we have here in procurement, knowing that will evolve over time. And so we have so much data in the organization now where we can provide very valuable insight into practices. That's where Carabelli Club is going to be heading down the future. And so, right now it may be primarily cost savings and continuing education, but there's a level of sophistication that my organization has, particularly in private practice or in private practice across the U.S., that we can provide guidance at a relatively low cost of entry, right? And so I thought, well, they're great practices. They may never be good practices to actually be equity shareholders in MB2.
Yep.
But I think this is a good way to give a little something to the profession, but also, hopefully grow into something much more meaningful in the space.
Yeah, and for the sake of brand awareness, Carabelli Club, not Club Carabelli. I said it incorrectly. Is that right?
Yeah. No, another nerdy dental term.
Well, actually, can you share a little bit about that? Because I actually just learned today that both MB2 and Carabelli are dental terms. Where did you come up with landing on those for the names of your organization?
I wish there was a more, meaningful approach to this, but it was literally me and my dogs talking about, our central service, you understand, for the first 10 years, like it was never outward facing, no patient saw it, no investor. Sure. It was just a bunch of dentists collaborating to hire a single accountant to save on accounting.
Yeah.
And so we just thought it'd be funny to name it after a dental term. And MB2 is obviously a canal that we talk about in dental school, and it could have easily have been any other plethora of words. But the runner-up was Carabelli, for the cusp of Carabelli, and so I recycled that one and I added it to the Carabelli Club.
Awesome.
So nothing more meaningful than that.
Yeah. I think people probably appreciate kind of the little dental insight.
Yeah, well, you look at the logo, that's a highly stylized access orifice with MB1 and MB2.
Yes.
That's how clever we thought we were.
Well, it is pretty clever, and it's very like kind of insider. It's like one of those if you know sort of things. I think a lot of people would pass that by. You talked about how being a leader is in many ways similar to raising children and being a parent. I heard you say on a podcast, and I got a kick out of it, so I just want to bring it up, that your son was trying to wrestle you, and he set some terms like, hey, but no tickling. And recently, my oldest son, he's entering.
There's no tickling in the executive team either.
No, yeah, that's right.
That's a hard and fast rule.
Yeah, probably have some trainings that you have to go to in those regards as well. Actually, I just have one of those in my inbox right now. Yes, so my oldest son, he's entering freshman year of high school, and he's playing football. And as he's gotten older, he's kind of like comes up and challenges a little more, and like wants to get a little more physical. And he's getting kind of big, so I don't know how long I want to do this. But when you think about raising your kids, and you reflect back on your time living within a very loving but strict family, what is it that you think about that you maybe more than anything else want for your children?
Oh, great question, man. A first generation American, I've been given a tremendous opportunity that I wholeheartedly embraced, and a very fulfilling job and career. And I ask for nothing more from my kids, right? I mean, how that looks, I don't know. It could be in any form or fashion. I don't, if they're fulfilled as a public servant or a school teacher, that's, I just want them to have those opportunities. With that said, I do spend a lot of time at the dinner table talking about entrepreneurship and owning a business. I think that's probably the path that most of them will take. They go to my company retreats and they kind of see me in action, and they really like the idea of being able to impact the lives of others. And I think, none of them have voiced strongly to the idea of being a healthcare provider like my wife and I, but,
Sure.
I think that's to be figured out. I think in the end of it, all we can ask for is, an opportunity to self-fulfill in whatever way that takes.
Yeah. Yeah. Are you applying any pressure to pursue the healthcare path?
No, it's a weird dynamic in my family. Like my wife, she's from Long Island, and she subscribes to a very, traditional approach, like colleges and where to go. And I'm a little bit different in the way I view college. I mean, I think it's important. I think it's great, but I went to a state school. I did just fine. And, I think I have a different skill set in entrepreneurship. Partly I attribute that to being wildly dyslexic, but, I think that's just a path that I took. And so I think there's just a lot of paths, and, all we can do is guide them in having the right scaffolding to have a good moral compass and be good individuals, and the rest will be figured out.
Now, you're clearly a Marvel fan. I've seen some of the Iron Man in the other building. Where did that come from, and how did that kind of transpire?
Oh, I think as any kid growing up in the 80s and 90s, I mean, superheroes were a big part of our youth, and that was just something that I held on to. And there's something about viewing yourself as hopefully using your God-given talents to do good. Right. Yeah. I think that's a universal aspiration, and they kind of embody that. And I have those conversations with my children, even at a young age. So I drive my kids to school every morning, and at a young age, I would say, what does it mean to be a V? What does it mean? And they'll be like, look out for others, stand up for others. And I'm like, yeah, that's what it means when you've been blessed. Like you got to look out for other people. And so I think instilling that type of, service in individuals, or the obligation to protect others or do for others when you have been given so much is an important part of that storyline. And so maybe that's where it can, the movies are pretty cool too. But
The movies are. Yeah. Do you have a favorite character from the Marvel universe?
yeah, I was always an Iron Man fan.
Okay.
That's why our original logo was red and yellow.
Okay.
I think it was just like it was not like a mutant of sorts. It was just a smart guy that used his brain to do cool stuff, and that kind of resonated with me.
Yeah. Yeah. Very cool. I also heard that at the very early stages of what is now Jarvis that had sold to HS1, but that you came up with the Jarvis name when you were first implementing the kind of intelligence analytics layer within your organization.
Yeah, Marules took my name. It was supposed to be a white label.
It did, yeah.
And of course, being an Iron Man fan and our Iron Man logo, I said Jarvis was obviously his assistant. So I was like, I'll just call it Jarvis. And, next thing I know, he's marketing as Jarvis. I'm like, these programmers don't have imagination in any one of their bones, I guess. But Marules is a great guy. I'm happy for him. But yeah, our intranet now is named Cerebro, and it's just common themes, and it's just fun, and I think it embodies kind of our culture. It's like, listen, like we're just gonna have fun. We're gonna work really hard, and we're gonna play really hard, and we're gonna do it together.
Now I have to ask this, and this is actually from my boss Eric, our CEO. I heard you don't have an executive assistant. Is this still the case, or has this changed over time?
Yeah, I don't want people knowing where I'm at any given time. That sounds like it's such a, listen, I think once again, everyone has a different leadership style.
Yeah.
And I was actually speaking to one of my relatives, and he was an executive at a very large firm, and he showed me his calendar on his phone. It's like every 15 minutes he's got a block, and his assistants are shoving things. I think the value I provide my partners and my board and my leadership is accessibility, right? If something comes up, like, I'm going to do whatever it takes to handle it. And so, I like the flexibility of being able to handle challenges before they become emergencies. But I also like the interpersonal relationships that I have with my leadership and my doctors. They text me, they email me.
Yeah.
We figure it out. I know it's a lot, but it's like they've invested their life's work in me, right? And I in them. And so I think that merits a personal relationship. It's that simple. And so I also use that as a mark to, how people want to treat me. If their executive assistant reaches out to me, then they really don't want to have a personal relationship with me. They just want a business relationship, which is, their prerogative. But, I'm also in a position where I don't need more professional relationships. If it's not one where I think it can add value to the organization, or to my personal life, or, be a friendship, then, I'm not really interested at this point in my career. And so, I think there's a lot of reasons why I don't have an executive assistant. I'm sure some of my executives wish I did sometimes because, I get flooded, but, by and large, I think that's a very core tenet of this business. And I think, one of my one sayings to the team metaphorically is like, everyone here gets their own coffee. Like, like it's not beneath me to do anything that the business requires of me. And I expect the same from my leadership and my doctors.
Yeah, no, that's great. I bring it up because Eric, our CEO, also does not have an EA and has been kind of the no EA mind as well for I think a lot of the same reasons that you shared. And I was interviewing a candidate at one point to join our team, and came from a private equity background. And so I'm not speaking on private equity, we're a private equity sponsored company. But the guy goes, what I love about joining a private equity firms is they always have EAs, and I love EAs. And Eric was telling me, hey, you got to meet this guy. Like, he's a great guy. And so I get off and I had to call Eric and be like, you're not going to believe it. I love EAs. All right, that's not going to work out so well here. So
yeah, no, it's there's a lot of psychology, and I'm not. There's different ways of leading, right? Like that works for me. There's an example that was once given to me that I read that always stuck with me. And it was about an example of if you needed to move apartments and, you had one friend that came and lifted the couch, and there's another friend who couldn't make it, but they sent a a mover
Yeah.
to move
sure.
on your behalf. And a month later, they both asked you to help them move on the same day. Like, who would you help?
The one
You
that
know?
helped you.
Yeah, there's something about the effort,
Yeah.
right? There's something about the effort of responding to an email or a text or picking up the phone that, sure, an EA could have done it for me, but I think in a JV model where the partnerships are so important and them understanding, how important I view our relationship is, I think that's a small price to pay.
Yep. I heard somebody on your team, I think today, shared that you had recently talked about like response equals respect. Like if you're responsive to the team.
Yeah.
And is that something that you generally look to?
Well, I think that
You're smiling when I said that. So
well, no, it's just first of all, I'm smiling because they listen to me.
yes, how about that?
But it is a true
It's
statement.
great validation.
Yeah, it's a true statement in your personal life, your professional life. No one's too busy to respond to you if they respect you.
Yeah.
I mean, no amount of work would stop you from responding to your wife or your child. And not to say that people rise to that level, but I think metaphorically speaking, I mean, if it's important enough, they're going to respond. And so I view the same way. I view that in my personal life and my professional life, right? And so I often get calls from other groups that, are asking me advice on a process, a recap process.
Yeah.
And, well, they said this, but they do that. And so, business doesn't need to be that complicated.
Yeah.
We know instinctually what a lot of it means, right? And so I share with them very basic very basic advice. Like I share with my daughters, for example. I said, listen, when you start dating, like don't listen to what he tells you, listen to how he treats you, right? So when you're in a process and they tell you one thing, but they do something different, you better pay attention, right? You're trying to get a response from someone, they're not responding. Like, it's don't get in your own head. It's really a very simple message, right? And so I think what I think I'm good at and the organization's good at is like really dumbing down a lot of supposedly very complicated concepts.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think a lot of people just get too conflated and they think it's really not. I mean, it doesn't matter if you're running a $1 million dental office or a multi-billion-dollar enterprise like ours. Like a lot of the same principles apply. I mean, I think I think it's great that you're here and you showed up and we're having a conversation in person. I think that means a lot to me about how serious you are about wanting to learn about MB2, and hopefully you feel the same way about me being here and not being on a Zoom call.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've got a lot of great advice, a lot of wisdom that you've been sharing. Where do you go these days to learn, or what is your approach to continuing to learn as you kind of grow within your role in your career?
I wish I was a reader. I think I think being a reader is more a metaphor for just someone who has a pursuit for knowledge. I'm a firm believer that there's two types of people. There's, people that like to be entertained and people that like to be educated.
Yeah.
And I just strive to be the latter, right? And so whether that's through podcasts or through documentaries or through, online searches, I mean, I try my best to try to keep up with the challenges the organization has. I don't think there's one way to keep up with everything. I think it actually could hurt you. I mean, I think a lot of leaders kind of live in an echo chamber and they try to emulate their business after a predecessor or someone else in the space. As you can see, we run things very differently, and yet than other dental groups, but yet we do okay, right? And arguably, better in a lot of ways. And I think that's partly because we acknowledge that not everyone has the answers, and at the same time, there's a lot of right answers.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think being open to the idea of thinking differently about a business and being able to take pieces out of other businesses, not necessarily in dental, has helped us really well. And me personally, I constantly, I listen to a lot of podcasts. I watch a lot of documentaries or docuseries about, businesses, and I try to learn as much as I can that way.
Now, I know you're not just growing for the sake of growth, and you all put a lot of time into choosing partners, but I also know you kind of have this mission that you're pursuing which is where dentists don't need to compromise and they're able to have kind of the best of both worlds, if you will. So in light of that, and kind of through that lens of seeking out the opportunity to provide these opportunities to dentists out in this country, and I think you guys are just North America at this point. Is that?
Yeah, just North America.
Just North America. How large could you become pursuing that path?
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing that says that our model would not succeed in other countries. I think there's just a lot of opportunity here today.
There is.
And I think our limiting factor is not necessarily the number of offices available to us, but really where we're allocating our resources to grow the organization. And so not to say that, next month a platform in Europe could pop up and we'd be interested. There's nothing precluding us from that. But I think we obviously have a massive pipeline in the US. I think we've, have a good reputation here and we have a lot of bandwidth here.
Yeah.
But
I'd be curious your perspective on this. A number of years back, there were a lot of dental companies that went public, and then really none of them were public any longer. They all got taken private or off market. Recently, Park Dental announced that they're doing a public offering. Not speaking on Park Dental at all, but when you kind of think of the future, do you think the public markets are a viable place for larger dental organizations?
Yeah, I actually think it's probably a superior place for larger platforms.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know Park Dental well. I don't know, enough to opine on their strategy. I do know that they're a smaller company. I think the public market is a great place for growing organizations like ours. I think that the trade-off often is worth it in that case. I feel like that is the best place for a consolidating group like ours to thrive. Just the fungibility of your stock and the ability to reward performance and having the capital to continue to grow is key. And I think as long as you stick to your guns and stay the course and don't chase shiny objects, and there's absolutely no reason why you wouldn't thrive in that type of environment.
You've been at dentistry for a long time. We know about all the headwinds that are in the dental space, reimbursements and inflation and staffing challenges. Like, it feels like all you ever hear about are the difficulties that people are having. But when you look at dentistry, what are the things that still make you really bullish about this profession and this industry?
Yeah, great question. The resiliency of the provider, I think, has surprised me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not taking a side on this, but if you look at some of the defunct platforms, I always thought they stopped paying their doctors. They're back on their supplies. Like, surely the doctors would leave, but for some reason they still have doctors.
Right.
And so what surprised me is the ability for doctors to stay resilient to the platforms that don't treat them right. That's just an observation. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying that surprised me, because if that was me and I was lied to, or, I don't think I'd be around very long. And so I think, what's unique and sometimes overlooked, and I tell this to my executive team sometimes, is like, we're dentists. This is it. Like, we're going to be dentists with or without MB2. And so our job is to make MB2 the best place to be a dentist. It's not like you guys that you can go do some vet roll up or, podiatry thing. Like, we're dentists. I mean, so I think what keeps me optimistic is that, dentists are passionate individuals. We are healthcare providers that really care about our patients, and, they're going to show up. I mean, dentists always show up, and that I've never had to worry about that. There's surely going to be anomalies, but as a generality, dentists are trusting, and they will do the work, and they'll make great partners, and that's what makes me really excited about the space.
Awesome, Dr. V. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you.
Really, really
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming out.
The Dental Economist Show is brought to you by Planet DDS. To find out more about how cloud-based dental software by Planet DDS helps unleash dentists and their staff to focus on patient care, visit www.planetdds.com. Stay tuned for upcoming episodes by following wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.